Hello, good evening, and welcome to a new episode of Arguably the Reading Quest. I am Nishant. So, the book I'm going to talk about today is The Impusium, a health resort horror story by Olga Tokarczuk. Olga Tokarczuk has been awarded a Nobel Prize in Literature in the year 2018. She's a writer from Poland, she's a Polish writer. And this beautiful blue color paperback, as you can see, is published at Fitzgerald Edition, a small publisher from London which is responsible for publishing in just a decade 5 Nobel Prize winners in literature in contemporary times. In the past 15 years, this publisher has published, writers who have been awarded Nobel Prize in literature after they are published at Fitzgerald. I don't know how they chose, writers who have, scored so well. And this Fitzgerald edition, no doubt, is giving, a tight fight, a real fight to, the big five publishing, world mafias in the world. A beautiful paperback. You can see the paper quality is awesome. It seems it's, uh, on the acid free paper. And, the cover, it's the infolded cover you can see here, right? And it's at 800 rupees, slightly higher priced, but far better than Penguin. I mean, Penguin is simply rubbish when it comes to paper quality. So, Olga Tokarczuk, before we start, just to give you a glimpse of, it's a health resort horror story. It's not exactly a horror story, uh, but there's a foreboding sign of evil that is always, lurking large throughout the narrative, throughout the plot, throughout the novel. That gives a very eerie sense of reading. So some of the quotes, as I always do whenever I introduce you one single book in the episode. Do you know what is the most common mistake people make when they are in danger? Each one thinks their life is unique and that death doesn't affect them. No one believes in their own death. Do you think I believe in my own death? He was impatient because everything fell short of his imagination and expectations, as if what he thought about the world came from other higher realms of the spirit. Moreover, since his youth had been sure he was unique, but somehow the world was unable to accept the fact. We may be similarly disabled inhabitants of a world that consists of 3 dimensions, and we shall never know what a fourth dimensional world is like. Do you see? We have no tools or senses to introduce us to a world with an extra dimension, let alone a fifth and a seventh and a 26th. Our minds cannot conceive of it. Just then he is overcome by a familiar sense of sadness, typical of those convinced of their own impending death. The world around him feels like a stage scenery painted on a paper screen, as if he could stick a finger into this monumental landscape and drill a hole in it, leading straight to nothingness. And as if nothingness will start pouring out of there in a flood and will catch him up to grab him by the throat. He has to shake his head to be rid of this image. It shatters into droplets and falls onto the leaves. You see, the narrative is beautiful actually. All these matters absorbed his mind, drawing the whole world inside into the large, chaotic space that each of us carries within, like an invisible piece of luggage that we drag after us all our lives without knowing why, our true self. Our entire culture has grown out of a feeling of inferiority, out of all those unfulfilled ambition. And yet it is the other way around. That which is weak in us gives us strength. This constant effort to compensate for weakness governs our entire lives. Demosthenes had a stammer, and that was exactly why he became the greatest speaker of all time. He preferred to belong to this world which did not yet know him and in whose eyes he still had time to define himself. He would rather take the risk that one day this world too would disappoint him and he would have to run away again, escape to yet another, more distant location to avoid falling into the arms of the familiar, hopeless state in which one was simply a brother to oneself and others. So, Impusium, Impusa is a shape changing female ghost from Greek mythology, and from there this title has been taken. So, Olga Tokarczuk is, Polish writer and activist, a public intellectual. She is one of the most critically acclaimed and widely translated, writers from Poland. Her novel Flight was awarded the 2018 Man's Booker International Prize. The Book of Jacobs, as you can see here in the background, here the Book of Jacob is his magnum opus. So, Book of Jacob is also kept, and her work has been translated into 40 languages. Uh, and she has been awarded a Nobel Prize for a narrative imagination that, with encyclopedic passion, represents the crossing of boundaries as a form of life. So, this book, Impulsion, the health resort horror story, is, I will say, and also the readers will agree. I mean, most of the readers agree. It's a common consensus that it's a Thomas Mann's Magic Mountain retold from a female perspective. So, and this is her book once she is awarded the novel. So, usually when writers are awarded novel, their career ends. But she is even more productive after once she is awarded. She has been awarded the novel. So, this book is once she was awarded the novel. So, this is the latest masterpiece set in a sanatorium on the eve of World War One that probes the horror that lies beneath our most hollowed idea. So, it happens, just to give you a brief background, that in September 1913, a student suffering from TB arrives at this health resort at Gorbersdorf, what is now Western Poland. Every day, it so happened that its residents gather in the dining room to imbibe the hallucinogenic local liquor, to obsess over money and status, and they discuss, many things of philosophy, of psychology, of, war and politics. Will there be war? Monarchy versus democracy? Do devils exist? Are women inherently inferior? Meanwhile, disturbing things are beginning to happen in the guest house and its surrounding. So, this is a typical Dracula like vibe, a foreboding sense of evil that is always, hanging just beside your head. But it never appears, it keeps on lingering, it keeps on lingering. And the stories of shocking events in the surrounding highland, reach the men. A sense of dread builds. Someone or something seem to be watching them, attempting to infiltrate their lives. And little does the protagonist, uh, you know, know as he attempts to unravel both the truth within himself and the mystery of the sinister forces that they have already chosen their next target. It can be the protagonist, it can be someone else. And this is a century after the publication of, Thomas Mann's Magic Mountain, where Olga Tokarczuk blends horror, comedy, folklore, and feminist parable with brilliant storytelling. Right. And the brilliant idea here is that the author let these people who are, in always constant gossip, paraphrase real misogynistic utterances from famous writers, thinkers. For example, Charles Darwin, William Burroughs, Jacques Kerouac, Jean-Paul Sartre, Arthur Schopenhauer, Friedrich Nietzsche, but not necessarily in the same order. So while there are almost no women here, the men are always obsessed with women, it seems in the story. And the mysterious narrator we here, it seems like the we function as a female ghost, the specters of dead women who fled their home and who were murdered in the witch trial in the 17th century, right? Uh, and they appear as, hallucinogenic mushrooms reminiscent of, female anatomy. But there are more other narrative strands as well. Right at the beginning, the abused wife of the owner of this guest house commits suicide. Plus, we learn that male patients mysteriously die every November. Why? What does it have to do with the female spirits and with the fact that all men are permanently on mushroom liquor? They're drinking a kind of liquor, this typical Polish name. And there's a horror element in the story, but one relating to femicide as well. So, when you read this story, you'll feel a kind of typical hallucinatory quality, of foggy, atmospheric, oppressive atmosphere, a kind of a group of, eccentric patients engaged in deep conversation, sometimes very unsettling, sometimes misogynistic, or sometimes their conversation, borders on life, death, woman, nature of existence. So, Imposium by Olga Tokarczuk is a wild mix of, I'll say, Goethic, philosophical, psychological element set in 1913. And this is Tokarczuk's signature style. Mixing the mystical with the mundane is all over this book. There's a constant feeling of someone lurking just below the surface, which makes the slow build incredibly tense. It's a novel that asks a lot of big questions, but instead of offering clear answers, it leaves you with a haunting sense of unease. And the later half of novel is a little speed up, like you'll feel as if you're reading it more speedily to find out what will happen, what will happen, what will happen. And the speed of your reading will definitely increase the more approach the later half, the end of the novel. So, a very wonderful book in the series of the ultra contemporary writing. Definitely recommend. This is one of my best reads this year. Uh, the Impusium Health Resort Horror Story by Olga Tokarczuk. So happy reading, guys. If you have still not liked, shared, and subscribed my YouTube channel, arguably the Reading Quest, please do that. Please press the bell icon. Please let me know how did you like this video, and please do let me know, what kind of videos are you expecting in the coming episodes. Happy reading. Thank you all of you.